This whole event is free and community-driven and wouldn't be possible without people volunteering their time to run breakouts and workshops and facilitate and so on. So again, a huge thanks to all of you. And now to introduce our first keynote speaker.
Okay, our first keynote today is Rachel Mail. So Rachel is a user researcher. She works in the Social Security Directorate for Scottish Government. She helps design disability and low income benefits for the people of Scotland. And she currently leads research operations, focusing on operationalizing their user research. So Rachel has a passion for ensuring user research is effective, efficient, and informative. Can we give a round of applause for Rachel as she comes to the stage? Clicker.
Okay, let's see if this works. Great. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Imran. I'm here today to talk about the impact of research operations when conducting user research at scale. So a little bit of background about the Social Security Directorate. The Social Security Directorate is responsible for ensuring that is there any way that we can get these slides so they're actually full screen on the screen here? They're down there, okay. But then I'm going to wait for the mic.
So you can, oh yeah.
So the Social Security Directorate is responsible for ensuring the safe and secure transition of benefits to be devolved from Scotland from the UK under the Social Security Scotland Act 2016. There are currently over 1.4 million people, and this amounts to about 2.8 billion money spent currently on the programme. We're working with the people of Scotland to design new and devolved benefits, and also we work with the Department of Work and Pensions to transfer these social security powers to Scotland. And we're in our 5th year of programme delivery. So that's a little bit of background about the Directorate itself. I'm going to talk to you through the lens of a case study. So this is something that we implemented at the Scottish Government in the Social Security Directorate, setting up research operations. And I'm going to go through these specific stages, talking about what we have done within our team. So the first bit is the problem statement. Now, user research within the Scottish Government, it exists in most teams within all the directorates across SG, and it is there to help ensure a user-centred approach is taken to the design and delivery of all the services. There is a big focus as well, however, on delivery and timescales. Many of our teams start out small, including our one in the Social Security Directorate. We started off as a team of 5 people, and then we rapidly scaled to help meet delivery requirements. So one of the first things that happened when we rapidly scaled was that we ended up with having a team of people from 5 user researchers suddenly going quite quickly to a team of 40 people. And this meant there was a lot of differences within how we were managing our knowledge management. Our teams were a bit siloed across all the projects. We weren't really talking to each other as well. And there was also some, when we had a team of 5 people within one project team, it was how are we going to make sure that we're not doing our research when another team is doing the research? How are we going to make sure that we are all focusing on doing the right bits for our projects? Click on. Okay, so one of the first things that I did within the project, we had adult disability payment at the time. We had over 5 user researchers in that team at that point in time. And because of that, we had to try and make sure that we were all communicating, that we were all documenting our research, so we knew what the outputs of this research were. And at that point in time, there was no information architecture, there was no standardized documentation of research, as in what should be written, what should be put down, and what was the what were the end results of that particular piece of research. So part of that work within our disability payment, I constructed some templates and an information architecture system to help us basically manage our knowledge within our small user research team. However, other teams within Social Security Directorate heard of this, and they wanted a copy of these templates and the information architecture because it was a very good way of showing our value to our product teams at the time. So one of the things that I did was I then started sharing these with amongst all the other teams, and then I came up with the idea that actually this, if I was given some time, we could put across the whole Social Security Directorate and we'd be able to solve some of our bigger problems that we had around recruitment, about our knowledge management, making sure we're not duplicating research. So I put together the idea for the Research Operations Department and the Knowledge Management System and presented this to the user research team leads. So one of the things is I have been talking quite a bit about what is research operations, and I most probably should give it a little bit of an explanation. So research operations is the mechanism strategies that set user research in motion. As you can see on this diagram here from the Nielsen-Norman Group, it covers some of the main areas. Governance, which is about data management, privacy. So for us in the Social Security Directorate, this was very much about our permission forms and making sure that all the data around our participants was kept safe and secure. Knowledge, in terms of collecting the information that we have from our user research and sharing the findings from that and our user needs. In terms of tools, research operations is responsible for making sure that all the tools that we have, like Optimal Workshop, Questback, are able to be used by our user researchers, and also that they understand how to use them, and that's where competency comes in as well. We're also there to help talk about user research and also help share the findings that we have from the particular user research so that other teams, other departments, other directorates can benefit from it. And we also help with the recruitment of participants as well. A quote that I have here from Alan Fulmer also says that a successful user research team should be a force multiplier for user research. So it isn't just making about individual researchers more effective, it's actually about leveling up how the whole organization does user research. So it's not just about one individual, it's about making sure that the whole team is operating effectively, efficiently, and also for the benefit of the users involved. So how did I get the senior management buy-in to have our research operations team? One of the things you've got to think about when putting together a pitch for a brand new idea is how are you going to address the fears that a person will have that your idea may change things, maybe potentially for the worse, but you have to also address the fears that they have, maybe about money, budget, software. How much is it going to cost is usually one of the primary things. But you also have to make sure that you address any concerns that people have around implementation. You've got to also think about the context that you're operating in. So your idea has to work for the context that you are actually fielding the pitch for. And also it should really mention the purpose and the goal of what you're trying to achieve. So why should you give me this time and this money in order to do this thing? I would definitely say do your research. Think about the language that you're using as well. So if management has a terminology or phrase that they particularly like using, use that one. Choose your timing and also come with solutions rather than a list of problems, and put together any visual aids that might help focus on key points. So some of the things that I put together were some wireframes about how things should work, also just some points around where the benefit of research operations would be felt within the Social Security Directorate. So one of the first questions I had to answer was, will it be expensive? Money and budgets are always a thing in our department. So one of the ways that I was be able to say was we'd be able to save money if we implemented research operations. We'd be able to save money through not duplicating our research, which is money spent on people doing the same thing twice. We'd also be able to save money in terms of our recruitment, because we'd then have an overall view of who needed what recruitment where, rather than individual projects going out to suppliers or people and therefore costing us more money in the long run. And also just showing how we'd be saving money in the future when we come to design our benefits, because we'd have this body of knowledge of research that was already done and documented, which we could use to start as a starting point for our desk research rather than having to start from scratch again. That was also another question that I had to answer, which was how will it help deliver organisational priorities and reduce risk? So one of the things we had to make sure about within research operations is our knowledge management, making sure that we actually have the documentation of what we've covered, what we've done, what the user research team have done, what they found out, their user needs, all of that stuff. There needed to be a minimum standard of what needed to be written down and done so that when another user researcher who hadn't been involved in the project could come along and see what actually had been done and be able to take those findings and use them as the basis of their piece of research. This would help us reduce the risk of having duplication of research. It would also help us in regards to participant fatigue as well, making sure we weren't going out to the same people, asking the same questions again, and then going, well, what have you actually done with the information that I told you last time? I also came across with a high-level explanation of how all of this could be achieved as well. So there's no point going straight into the detail, but actually just giving an outline of how the systems and structures of research operations could actually help with all of these things. One of the other key questions I had was, will we need any new software or platforms for this proposal? This most probably has underpinnings as well for the budget. It also got to think about at this point in time is if you do need any new software, you're going to have to train your team. That's going to cost time. You're going to have to make sure it's accessible as well. So I'd always say, check to see what is currently possible within the confines of the resources you already have available. We already had our product teams very built into some pieces of software that we were using, and this would help with our relationship with them if we stayed on the same pieces of software. But if you do find that there is not feasible given the software that you currently have, is to talk about what extra value any additions would bring and why that is worth the investment. Things to think about along those lines is highlight any savings or costs that you would make later down the line, and think about efficiencies and scaling, especially around data security or processes, because something that may work now for your team of 5 to 10 user researchers may not be a process that will work well at scale. So once I got the buy-in for this piece of research operations to basically have it within the user research team, I also got given some time to be able to conduct user research with the UR team. Now, this is very important because I believe this is something that no team should really skip. So help solve quite a few things. You actually find out what the needs of your team are, rather than the wants. It also makes sure that whatever you're doing has a good level of usability, but it also stops the loudest voice in the room. If you just have a meeting about what you should do next, sometimes people who are talking quite loudly will talk over people who don't feel confident to say their points, and that can sometimes change the direction of your team. By actually doing user research, this helps identify also future areas for improvement, set strategies, and it also helps bring your team along with you on the journey and helps them have a voice. So through our user research, we managed to identify any issues that we had with our current templates, also how people were wanting to see the direction of research operations and where the areas that they felt it would have the greatest impact within the user research team. So we did all these interviews one-on-one, and we made sure that there was a lot of security to make sure that nobody knew who was actually taking part in the research, because anonymity within internal user research is very important. So we went away and we analysed the findings to see what was going on, and we did this thematically to see what was coming up. Some of the areas that we focused on was how were our templates working in terms of the templates that we used to document our research, so our setup, our analysis, our user needs. Were they fulfilling the needs of user research at the moment? Did they feel there were other things that needed to be added to these things, or was actually there too much documentation? Because there is a balance to be had between documentation and user research. We also found out what the direction of the team and where they would like to head, where they wanted additional templates, how they felt recruitment was going at the moment, and how they felt that their guidebook was going. So we put all these findings back together, we played it back to the user research team. One of the key things that we found from this piece of user research is that people really wanted to know and have a template for handover documents. So when a user researcher was handing over their work to another user researcher, we'd managed to cover everything that was at the detail level, but at the quick handover of these are the points, these are the things that you need to discuss, these are the points to be taken forward. That was something that the team wanted there. They also wanted more clarity around our handbook for user research so that people could find the processes and procedures easier, so that they knew what they had to undertake, for example, when they were recruiting somebody or when they were setting up a particular piece of research. We then obviously update our system every so often. This is a continuous process. This isn't just one and done piece of user research with the team and we now have a research operations department that's running perfectly. No, this is something that we go back to the team and we talk about, we check in, we evaluate. But we've also been sharing these findings with other directorates now who are interested in having their own research operations department and what benefits it would bring. So some of the things from installing research operations within the user research team. One of the biggest impacts we've had is around our knowledge management. Now, we came up with an information architecture for our user research team, which goes into each project area. And this also has a set of templates within it to make sure that all the findings, the recruitment, the analysis, how it was done, the methodologies is all documented. This is meant using the platform that we use that is now much easier to search and find information. So it's meant quicker access to research documentation and findings for user researchers. So when it comes to now, has there been any research on this? It's something you can search the platform for. It's avoided a lot of duplication of research because now there's more connectivity between the teams, so teams can now see what research has been done within other teams, and it helps avoid duplication. It's also helped align our user research activities. There's now a strategic overview of what research is going on when, so that we can make sure that people join up. That's one of the roles of research operations, to make sure that people join up within their research. So if two teams are doing something similar, we'll suggest that they have a talk with each other so that they're able to consolidate what they want to ask their users. We've also been able to share our findings within the Social Security Directorate team, but also beyond. We now have other departments, other directorates, digital, asking us, because our program's been going for 5 years now. We have a large body of research. So we have other programs coming to us going, hey, do you have any user research on this particular subject? And now, because we have a knowledge management system in place, we can go forward and go, yes, this is what we have. Is this of any use to you? And the minimum documentation standard that I've been talking about, which is the use of the templates within the project information architecture, has not only contributed to our research repository, so our ability to search on what research has been done, but it's also helping with our handovers. It means that user researchers who are coming onto a project can see what has been done before. In terms of governance, competency and tooling, since establishing research operations, we have more confidence now that we're complying with GDPR and managing participant data securely. Research operations is a place that user researchers can come to and ask questions about GDPR data management, especially if they've got a particular methodology that they want to make sure that the data within that is secure. It also allows user researchers to focus on research, so they're able to see what research has already been done, but they're also able to see what research has been happening, and they also don't have to worry about recruitment and things like that, because that is what research operations will cover. We also help make sure that the team is kept up to date with the latest tech features and releases. So when there is updates to our software, when we are taking new software on board, we will organise and manage team training so that user researchers know how to use the piece of software that they wish to use. And we also keep the user research team, up to date with any documentation or processes or tooling that has changed. So if we change a process, say for recruitment, if we change a process for in-person home visits, we'll make sure that the team is up to date and informed. And research operations help manage those processes to make sure that they're efficient. In terms of recruitment, the impact on recruitment has been that we've been able to alleviate participant fatigue and allow teams to manage resource. So this is basically, some of our participants are very hard to reach, but some of our participants are also exceedingly busy in their day-to-day lives. So we have to make sure that they're getting value out of it, and we are also helping them have the benefits that they deserve. One of the other things that we have is the improved recruitment tracking and feedback loop, so we can actually see what recruitment is happening when, and we're getting feedback on what worked, what didn't work, so that we can improve the next time round. This also helps perform coordinated research and enhance stakeholder relationships, because now some of the processes are more efficient, that basically people, when they come to the research operations team know that there is a process for being able to get a particular user that they're after. This is what's happening. We keep them informed. Also, there's been a cost reduction because this has meant that people haven't had to rely so much on external recruitment agencies, because we've been able to source the research participants ourselves, or just have better relationships with either third sector organisations or as well as our colleagues in agency. And the centralised process of research operations is saving time and effort as well, because the researchers can come ask us for advice. We will go away, we will try and source the participants for them if possible, or if not, make sure that they fill out the documentation so that they can get access to those participants in a way that's quick and efficient. So one of my key takeaways from this is, don't be daunted. You can actually implement research operations within an established team to achieve all the benefits. Our team, we'd already scaled up to 40. We already had a lot of people doing a lot of different things. You don't have to start early with research operations. It is recommended, but if you've already got to that point where everybody's scaled up, the knowledge management's going a little bit squiffy, and you're wondering what is happening and everybody's recruiting the same people, it's not too late. You can have a research operations team. I would say you should prioritise. You don't have to do it all at once. Pick your thing. Find out what your team's priority is. Find out what is the top thing that needs to be addressed so that user research can be done more efficiently and effectively. If that's recruitment, tackle recruitment first. If it's knowledge management, go tackle knowledge management first. Work with the resources that you have available. So if you want to establish research operations and make impactful changes, if you can work with what you've got, then you can make a case for having further investment further down the line. For example, we're now putting forward a case for some more software for our research operations department based on the fact that we've managed to make some savings in other areas. Also, find out what your organisation and research team needs are and create the solutions that work within the context of your team and your deliverables. What might work for one research operations team may not work in your research context. This is why it's very important to talk to your team and find out what is happening within that team. Also, think about efficiency and scaling, because if you have a very small team with a very small process, that process may work for 5 people. If it's go and talk to somebody and they'll quickly put it through for you, that will work. But if you put it up to 40 people, that's not going to work. It's going to fall apart. So always think, when you're creating a new process, will this be efficient and will this be able to scale? And the most important point with all of this is to bring the team along on the journey. So there is no process, no procedure, no documentation that will work unless you have the buy-in from your team. So it's very important to bring them with you on the journey, because if you don't, the best system still won't work. And that's me. I can take questions, yes.
We do have a little bit of time for questions. If there are any questions for Rachel, just put your hands up, yeah? And I'll run over with my mic. May have to do a bit of a pass.
Hello, super interesting. I'm curious about the idea of minimum standards. How did you decide a minimum, the balance of what was useful versus people can't do it because it's too much work?
Okay, so some of this came from the fact that I have also been a user researcher within the team for a long time. So I'm not just coming in as a research operations specialist, I've been a user researcher within the team as well. We went through a period of pilot testing with several teams for the basis of these templates. And some of the things that we knew that we needed to record was the findings. We needed to record who the research had been done with, but also the method that had been done and how the analysis had taken place. This was how we decided this was definitely going to be the basis of things, because if any user researcher was looking back on that piece of research, that is what they would definitely need to know. After that, it was within consultation within the team, using the internal user research as well, to find out what other things would be useful for user researchers, but also thinking about our legacy and the research that we're leaving behind, because we wanted to make sure that somebody could look at this piece of work and go, yes, I understand what the key takeaways are, who this was done with, the integrity of the work, and that's why we have to also record how the analysis was done and the methodology, because it's not just enough to record the findings, because you need to be able to look back if you need to and go, okay, yes, that methodology was sound, that analysis was sound, this is, if anywhere, maybe some bias crept in, this is who we did the research with. And this has meant that we've been able to, that's where the standard kind of came from. What would we need in order to have that confidence in the research itself?
Thank you, Rachel.
We have another question at the back here. Hi, Rachel. Apologies in advance. My question is going to be quite unfolding. So I think I heard like a rough 40 number for the team size that you're in, and then maybe like a 5 number for the user researchers within that unit. Is that always been the case? Has it always been structured that way? What is it like working with other user researchers quite closely? For example, we have quite a small team. We have one user research working on their own. Like, can you talk a little bit about the differences and the advantages?
So we started off with a team of 5 people, and we scaled to a team of over 40 user researchers. So when we only had a team of 5 people, we were only managing 2 benefits at the time: Best Start grant and what was the next one? Funeral support payment, I believe. So they were the 2 that we were looking at the time. So at that point in time, we only needed 5 user researchers. I would say there was still a bit of siloed working there. I believe one team talked about their research and their knowledge findings with them, and then the other team, funeral support, kind of kept their talk and their research with themselves. As we started to grow and we started to have more benefits come on board, we ended up with more and more researchers. But the problem was happening was that as all these separate benefits were being launched, none of the teams were connecting up with their research on what intensively can sometimes be the same user. So as we started to scale, that's when things started to unravel a bit, which is where research operations then started to step in, because we needed that strategic overview to be able to go, okay, so we're all starting to speak to the same type of user. What type of research are you doing within your benefit? What type of research are you doing with your benefit? And I think one of the key things is when a team scales, you've got to make sure you start communicating properly. Within a small team, you can have a great interpersonal relationship and kind of know what's going on. But as a team scales, you've really got to keep an eye on your documentation, because it's not going to all just be by word of mouth. It's going to be those informal conversations, but also be able to see what has actually been done in terms of being able to see that asynchronously without having to talk to anybody, and also be able to see what's happening across teams. Does that help answer your question?
Right, we had another question over here.
Cheers. Thanks. That was really interesting. I was wondering what you've been able to do with videos of user research. Are you in a position to be able to share those more widely? Did you have to tweak the way you did consent, for example?
So in terms of our lawful basis at the moment and our DPIA, at the moment we do record video for sessions, but that has for internal purposes only for those people that are on the project. Our DPIA and also the permission form, we make sure that particular clips of research are actually only restricted down to the researchers to see, because at the moment, because of obviously identification of a research subject, it's not covered by our DPIA to make sure that we share video with people within that at the moment. We have had some discussions about audio, but once again, one of the things we're making sure at the moment is the client is protected from make sure that they have the anonymity. But we are allowed to record our user research sessions, but only using certain pieces of software.
Any more questions for Rachel? Yeah.
Hi, Rachel. I worked in the Carers Allowance team in DWP, and I know there's a huge amount of crossover between DWP and the work that you're doing. Is there a move to try and share information from user researchers from DWP? Is there active communication there?
I believe the Carer Support Payment Team are in conversation with the DWP, and I know that several other benefit projects are also talking to the DWP around the user research. In terms of the legacy that we leave behind, that is going to be work that should be available for other teams to use as a basis for their work as well. So that is what we're hoping to achieve by making sure that the legacy that we leave behind is the body of work with confidence that it can be used for other benefits or other areas that involve the users that we've been speaking to.
Thank you. One bonus question. Which software did you find that was accessible, shareable? You didn't need 1,000 permission slips to get through.
I would say that there is no perfect piece of software, and I think some of the software that we use at the moment, mainly there's a lot of grounding within Atlassian products that are a particular piece of work, but that's mainly because of other corporate issues that are there as well, and it's making the best of what we have. I would say no piece of software is 100% accessible or workable that we have at the moment. However, we're trying to make the best of what we've got to make it as accessible as possible, to make it as shareable as possible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we have one final question over here.
Hi, thank you. Great talk, and delighted to hear it. Very relevant to my current work, which is about working on a template for sharing research within NHS Digital, NHS England. So my question is, could you make that template available somewhere so that folks from outside the organisation can actually see it and try using it as well?
Can certainly consider it. I think one of the things you've got to think about is that our template, some of it is working specifically with the piece of software that we have, but the actual underpinnings of how we came about with that template and the areas that we've included, I'm happy to have a discussion with you later about what we included as the basis, and some of the basis we also have been sharing on the Gov channel, Government Digital Research Operations Community. So some of it is already up there about the basis of what we've done, because we've done a talk to that particular community on the work that we've been doing so far.
Great stuff. I think we'll give Rachel a break. I just want to say this is her first time keynoting, so please give her a massive round of applause. That was great.